But standards, the actual standards movement, you could basically say is, and we want to make sure they meet certain standards, and here's what those standards are. Now, some people actually go back to Sputnik. Everybody know what Sputnik was? Okay. Actually, kind of modern. I was around for Sputnik. I remember as a kid, this was like 1956, I grew up in Seattle, standing outside my house at night. In those days, you watched ABC, CBS, or NBC. That was it. Okay, so 3 channels, and they would let you know if Sputnik was going to come over, and it just shook the United States. I remember seeing this little blinking light, going over. It just terrified everybody. It wasn't too far after that a guy named Admiral Rickover wrote a book where he was one of the first, and he was big name in the military, obviously. He was one of the first to tie U.S. security with our school system. And he basically said, look at that, we don't have enough math and science, all right? So you could actually go back there. For sure, you can go back to 1989, and that was the first education summit under President Bush Sr. And this 89, and they set goals for the year 2000. It was called America 2000. Okay? And they said by the year 2000, we will be first in the world in math and science. That was the goal in 1989. Oops, we didn't quite pull that one up. But what it did, it started the standards movement. Because soon after that, money was pumped into professional organizations to create standards. Actually, mathematics, National Council of Teachers of Mathematics, already had their standards out in 1988. And the government said, look, follow the math people's lead. So within a few years, there were standards in about 14 different subject areas that were kind of sample standards. The states took those, Nevada being one of them, and created their own standards. That's when we realized there was something wrong, something amiss. By nobody's fault. Well, see, they got people who were passionate about their subject area to write the standards, and of course they were going to lobby for the standards. So they said, well, gee, the standard should be this, this, and this. And what happened was there was so much content, it was a huge problem. I was at another R&D firm at that time. We did a study where we asked teachers to estimate how long it would take to teach the standards at their level. Then we added that all up. Here's what we found. If you didn't add hours to the school day or school days to the year, you'd have to add 10 years to the K-12 sequence. In other words, school would have to be K through 22 or K through 23. No kidding. Now, states kept revising their standards, and then the Common Core came along, and the Common Core, when it started, 46 states were on board. Then all of a sudden it became very, very controversial, and everybody kind of shrunk back, and they said, like some states like Pennsylvania said, we don't do the Common Core. Look at their standards, they do the Common Core, okay? And some states say they do. And the Common Core was intended to accomplish at least 2 things. One was to increase the rigor of expectations on students. Did they do a good job of that? Yes, they did. Are our standards more rigorous than they were 10 years ago? No kidding. You look at our standards now, you look at what you're teaching or expecting kids to do now versus 40 years ago, it is a whole different ballgame. So nobody could say, U.S. education isn't striving for rigor. I mean, it's a very rigorous set of expectations that we have. Good news for us, kudos to us. Here's the bad news. Their second goal was to decrease the amount of content. They tried, but it just didn't work. It really didn't. Common Core, 8th grade, English Language Arts, there are 73 standard statements. Each one of those statements has about 5 different topics in it. So you've got 365 things that 8th grade English Language Arts teachers following the Common Core are trying to teach in basically a 180-day school year, although it varies from state to state. Actually, I should know, how many days in the school year? 180? Okay, great. Colorado's a little less. So, what's the problem with the knowledge system? We try to teach too much. So a way to solve that is to come up with a lean and focused set of content. That's what the Academy has. They're in the form of proficiency scales. That is the content. I'll go into that form. It's kind of an unusual form, although it's been around for 20 years. If the kids know that content, they're going to do well, on pretty much any test you give them. So it's lean, it's mean, it's focused. Okay, if there are other peripheral things you can put in as a teacher, but still, that's it. So we've done that, and there's actually on the website marzanoresearch.com, there's a paper explaining all that. You can look at how we did it. There's still room for wiggle. We'll make adaptations at the end. We'll go through a year and say, should we add anything? Should we delete anything? And we will do that. You will do that. We'll do all the dirty work. There's a team of people that will do that. But you're guiding this endeavor. That's the knowledge system. The cognitive system, what's that? Just what it sounds like. Okay, that's when we solve problems, make decisions, analyze information, draw conclusions, et cetera, et cetera. That's the cognitive system. Has K-12 education in this country focused on that? Different answer, right? I always say no, yes, no, yes. Let me explain that. In the beginning, I mean, if you go back to, and actually in the United States, public schools started in the early 1900s, because each state, when they became a state, then set up an education system. So depending on the state, you got something that's 100 years old or maybe a little more than 100 years old. They all have a very similar format in terms of funding. We tax, property tax, and you don't have property tax. Taxes that are, well, you do, but I'm sorry. So the funding is the same, and the systems are pretty much the same. In the beginning, it was all about the content, real basic content. And there were certain readers that everybody wrote. So there was a strong moral influence in the curriculum. Ever heard of the McGuffey Reader? You might look that up. The McGuffey Reader was one of the first basals, if you will. And it really had a strong moral tone. It really did, which I kind of liked. There were some other pieces that, it wouldn't work in a diverse society like we have right now. So we didn't, as a system until 1980. And then there was a big movement to enhance students' thinking skills and teach them problem-solving, decision-making, analysis, et cetera, et cetera. It was really an exciting time. There was an organization called ASCD, but they put out a little magazine called Educational Leadership, familiar with that? They really led the charge in that. And I was lucky enough to be part of that. I was really excited about it. Gee, how do you teach kids to be better problem solvers, better decision makers? How do you teach them to analyze information? How do you teach them to think critically? I mean, very, very exciting time. And actually, California was really leading the nation. They had an assessment system called CLASS, California Learning and Assessment System. And this is 1980 now. We didn't have technology like we do now. They were given open-ended items. Explain this, provide an argument for this, which had to be scored by human beings. But it was changing the nation. It really was. That all went away in the early 1900s. Excuse me, in early 1990s. I don't go back that far. I'm sorry. So in the 1980s, it was an emphasis on thinking skills. Early 1990s happened. It came. It all went away. Can you make a link? What happened around 1990? The standards movement, right? 1989, by early 1990, we had all these standards. So testing came in, and it focused on the little pieces, and it killed the entire system. Now that was gone until the Common Core. If you look at the Common Core, it's back again. So a school that is operationalizing what we've learned over the decades would have a strong emphasis on cognitive skills. We do. There's a list of cognitive skills, each one with its own proficiency scale. They'll be taught at certain levels. You actually have to decide that. We've got them in grade level bands, K2, 3, 5, 6, 8, and 9, 12. And that'll be one of the first things we ask you to do. Well, these cognitive skills, what should be approached first grade versus second grade versus kindergarten, et cetera, et cetera. So that's pretty solid in K-12 education. What's metacognitive? What's the metacognitive system? Yeah, that's thinking of your own thinking. Now, there's more to it than that. It's really an awareness of your own thinking, an awareness of the human mind. The kind of primary skill in the metacognitive system is the ability to set goals, make plans for those goals, carry out those plans, and make corrections along the way. Is that an important set of skills? What do you think in terms of human development, in terms of kids succeeding, in terms of adults succeeding? Massive, it really is. Now, some teachers do that. I've been very close to the classroom for a long time, virtually now. Now I do it virtually, I should say. I watch over 300 videos a year of classroom teachers. We do our research doing that. We have a system in Florida that's used for evaluation, so I have the opportunity to look and analyze what happens in classrooms. And I see a lot of teachers teaching that informally. Set a goal, what's your plan, how are we going to get, but I don't see very many schools in literally no districts who teach it as part of the curriculum. We're going to do that. Okay, actually teach kids, here's how you set goals, here's why it's important. We'll teach other things, like, seeking accuracy, making sure that, you're accurate in your conclusion. Or clarity, making sure that if you don't understand, you say, well, I don't get that. That's what Rebecca ask. Seek clarity. If you don't understand it, say, I don't get that. Explain it again. Now, these are skills that have been out there for years. Research behind them. There are materials out there that are free. And just it's got an intuitive appeal too. So those three systems, I think we've done a good job. We haven't done it very overtly in K-12 education. We're going to do it in the academy. So the curriculum is not just the knowledge system. It's also the cognitive system and the metacognitive system. And actually, as you go up, the systems become more important in my mind. They really do. Although people will tend to look only at the knowledge system. We'll have to do a good job there. The self system. What's that? Again, at your table, if you had to describe the self system, how would you describe it? Turn to the person next to you. The self system is fundamentally our set of beliefs, okay, about who we are, what's important. And some people believe, I'm one of them, that human beings are kind of hardwired with certain types of beliefs, or at least areas where they develop beliefs. And so here's the model that we use within the academy. It's an old one. Abraham Maslow with some adaptations. And he said, human beings are hardwired with a need. He calls them hierarchy of needs. Physiological comfort, yes? We all have that. And he actually says, and this is their order too, and you're kind of constantly scanning your environment for these, asking yourself questions, if you will. And if you don't feel comfortable physiologically, you shut down. For example, if it all of a sudden got to 120 degrees in this room, ball game's over, right? You're out of here. Or if we're 20 degrees, ball game's over. So we make sure, and think of K-12 education, do a good job of the physiological comfort of students? Well, yes and no. Comparatively, yes. Go to Thailand and go out into the rural Thailand and look at a school, or India, and be in a classroom there, and it will be 110 degrees. It really will. Or they won't, no walls, or actually I forgot to bring there's a slide that I have, a friend of mine, Diane Painter, you'll meet her at one point. And it's a classroom in Thailand, but the kids are outdoors, and there was student, and all the kids are kind of sitting in the grass. Student is writing on the blackboard, nothing new there, except the blackboard's a water buffalo. And I said, this was staged. She says, no. So it's a water buffalo, and she's writing on the water buffalo. I said, what happens when the water buffalo runs to the water? I mean, is that a PE then? Do you have to, so I'll get the blackboard back out of the water, for God's sake. That's the closure of the letter. Okay, ball game over. So we do a relatively good job. We can always do better, and I think you're going to find that. With Rebecca's insistence on not the, prison-type chairs, that's part of it. We want to make this an environment, and I don't know if she's got some spectacular ideas, for that physical environment and just the ambiance of it, which, hopefully that's a really big part of what we do. Safety. Do we have a need to feel safe? And we usually don't think about that. You feel safe here. Okay, it doesn't even cross your mind. However, you don't have tornadoes here. We do have tornadoes. We work a lot in Oklahoma. Oklahoma, tornado warning goes off, ball game's over. Okay, you go and you seek shelter. Actually, the general public thinks schools are less safe than they were before. Okay, they're actually more safe. If you look at the numbers, we actually get a little better each year. Then these horrible things happen that we just can't seem to explain, like Columbine. Remember Columbine? Okay, now, Columbine's not too far from where I live. My wife's a psychotherapist. She was one of the second responders, in that she volunteered her time for a year to work with teachers and students. And now since that's happened, we have these anomalies, these things that just kind of jump out. We can't quite figure out why, although some people speculate, and I think there's some good ideas. So it's not just, are they safe? They are safe. The kids are safe in Clark County schools, absolutely. And they'll be safe in the academy too. But it's their perceived safety. Do they perceive themselves as being safe? And that's that. So they can be safe, but if they don't perceive themselves as being safe. Oh, I know. Oh, that's so good. Yeah, I grew up in the era of the Cold War. Okay, so it drives me nuts when I hear those. Yeah, I watched too much news TV, and it was a few years ago. I'm kind of a worrywart. My friends always kid me, and so I say, when things are going well, I worry that a comet's going to hit the Earth. There's always something to worry about. And I'm watching TV, and there's a story about a comet, that was it came between the Earth and the Moon. That was about 3 years ago. That's pretty close. And of course, while they're doing this story, they're showing scenes from Armageddon. Remember that? You know, New York blowing up and stuff like that. And I thought, oh my God, it made me a little nervous. Now the next day they said, oops, it's going to miss by a whole bunch of miles. But that took like 10 seconds. The day before, it was like 5 minutes. And I remember thinking, I'm scared. What if I were 6? You know, and I remembered, I grew up in the Cold War, and we really thought at any point Russia was going to, the Soviet Union was going to send their missiles, and we were going to send ours. And we used to practice. We used to actually practice. Go in the hallway, duck and cover. Don't look at the flash. You know, and enough food that when your city was destroyed through the rubble. So people my age, that's why we're all screwed up, okay? So give us a break. But it really was for years. I remember thinking, well, our generation's not going to last that long. So all the stuff that kids are seeing on TV add to that sense of perceived lack of safety. Belonging and esteem within a community kind of go hand in glove. Oh, they are different though, a little bit. Belonging is I'm a member of the group. You know, I'm not an outcast in the group. I'm a member of the group. Esteem within the community is I'm not only a member of a group, but I'm kind of working my way up in the pecking order. Is that important to kids? Yes. Yeah. Do they have those needs? Every one of these, if you say no, that need's not being met, that's all you focus on. So it's really hard to teach math or science or ELA through that incredible need. Does K-12 education do a good job of those levels 3 and 4 there? Yeah, we try. It's really hard. It's really a tricky thing because you can't always see it. If you had my middle granddaughter, Aida, and all my grandkids go to public school. You know, all my kids have gone to public school by design. And Aida's quiet, and, you know, and she just won't cause any. She's bright and she's funny, and I try to spend time with my grandkids individually as much as I can. Not as much as I should, obviously. But I was with Aida. This is a few years ago. She was in middle school, and she was upset. I said, "What's going on, honey?" And she told a story about, you know, that middle school little cliques, and she had talked to the wrong boy or something like that. And I'm thinking, oh, isn't that sweet, that little middle school romance stuff they have. And then she started crying, and they said, they have shunned me. And I thought, oh my God, this is no little quirky thing to her. That's her whole life. You know, they have shunned me. So that need, she was in the group. Well, actually, she was shunned. She was thrown out of the group. Just a huge need. So you almost can't go wrong focusing on that. There's always kids who, by definition, all of us need it. We adults need it. Now, K-12 education, I think, does a decent job of the first 4. At least we're very aware of it. We try to do our best. The next 2, we don't. And that is self-actualization and connection to something greater than self. And these are the big motivators. If you have kids who are self-actualized and connected to something greater than self, that's when you don't have to tell them to do something. So here's what self-actualization is. That's when they're working on things that they really want to work on. Okay? Now here's the tricky part. When they're little, it might not be math or science. Okay? They might want to be a football player or a basketball player or whatever it is. So one of the things we'll have in the academy, every year, every student will be working on a long-term project of their own design. You know, we have to figure out how to build it in. You don't do it every day. I'd like to see it once a week in some type of homeroom situation. You know, we get the best results when the teacher engages in that too. So, well, here's my goal for this year. I want to, you know, run a marathon, or I want to take a vacation, you know, this summer. Whatever it is, and they're constantly working on it. You're sharing yourself, you know, and all the ups and downs and the inspiration, hopefully, that comes from that. You get that going. You know, and you've now started to, you know, flip a switch for kids, and you don't know when the effect will truly show up, but it's there. I get passionate about this one because I've seen it in my own family so powerfully. My oldest, my 49-year-old son, was a non-academic in school. He learned to read very late. The only book, when he graduated from high school, the only book he was good with cars. So he liked gas engines and cars and motorcycles and stuff like that. And he was really intense on that stuff. And he and his buddies would work all night tearing an engine apart and so on. I mean, they were intense. They really were, but just non-academic. When he graduated from high school, the only book he had ever read was The Mouse and the Motorcycle. That was it. That was his one book. At least he picked the classics. You know. And he was counseled not to go to college. He said, "You're not." It drove me nuts. My wife had to like restrain me. You know, it's just stay out of it. You know, don't. I was going to go to talk to the counselors. What are you doing? You can't say that. But he didn't have the grades for it. He agrees. Says, Dad, I'm not academic. He wanted to be a mechanic, and I said, if you're going to do it well. So we had the diesel school picked out that he was going to go to. And I said, just if you're going to be a mechanic, be the best mechanic you can. He wanted to race top fuel dragsters. He was even on the crew of a top fuel dragster at age 14, which I think was illegal, but he, you know, did that. And I said, you know, just do it. If you're going to do it, go for it all the way. I'm behind you. And it all changed when he saw the movie Top Gun. Remember? Ever seen the movie Top Gun? He said, I want to be a fighter pilot. And I said, really? He said, yeah. Is it possible? I said, you bet it's possible. So you know you got to go to college, but do it. I'm behind you. He actually swore me to secrecy. I couldn't tell his mom, his sisters. You know, it was such a weird dream. Well, that got him out of high school. He had to go to a community college, make about a year of school. He then entered University of Colorado Aerospace Engineering, because that was the best degree to have, to be a pilot in the Navy. Graduated with honors, went into the Navy and flew F-18s for 20 years. Okay, actually graduated from Top Gun and became an instructor at Top Gun. Just a great career, commander of a squadron, the whole thing. So once he got excited about that goal, and even had a little bit of success. I remember he would set yearly goals for his grades, hated academics. But he said, I got to get a good grade for this. That just, you know, drew him his whole life. It really did. And after 20 years in the military, you can retire and have a pretty good retirement. So he unfortunately was deployed a lot. He was away from home, very, very dangerous missions that he was on. He had 20 years, said, Todd, you've done it. You know, retire, lead the good life, go fly for United and see your family. And but the Navy threw a monkey wrench into it. They selected him to become commander of an aircraft carrier. Now they do that to 6 people a year. And you have to sign up for another 9 years. And 2 of those years are nothing but books. You know, he just hates books. And I said, Todd, you don't have to do this. And he said, I think I'm supposed to do this. Now that's the important part of the story. I think I'm supposed to, he said, no, I want to give back. And I've developed a certain level of, I think it's my turn now to do something that kind of helps the bigger cause. So as I speak, he just finished a tour as, you know, an executive officer, as #2 in command of the USS Nimitz. And prior to that, he was executive officer of the Lincoln, and next December he'll take over his own ship. Now, I like to brag about my own kids, obviously, but do you get the point? You know, as you go up the hierarchy here, you become more, it's more and more intrinsic motivation. So here's what you could say, that metaphorically, every kid in every classroom, actually every human being, but it's more for kids because they aren't as formed as we are in terms of the world and where we fit into it. They're asking these questions. Is this situation comfortable from a physiological perspective? And if they get a no, that's it. You know, that's what they attend to. Is this situation safe? Am I welcome in this situation? Do I have a sense of status in this situation? Does this situation allow me to move toward a personal goal? And does this situation inspire me? That's actually the most important part of the academy. I want to make sure we operate from that, formally and informally. So it really should be a place where kids are inspired. And there's part of the curriculum that addresses that. At least once a week, inspirational stories. You know, that might come from, you know, Rebecca right out of her office, where a story. From the community, bringing in people to come in and talk about what they've done. Individual classroom level, you can do that. Stories that you've heard. Now we have resources. What's really great, there's so many resources to this end that are out there. Every year, every kid is working on their own personal project. You know, so I want that, really. You're not inspired every day of your life, but imagine going to a school where at least once a week there was something like, wow, that's really neat, or I could do that. You do that for enough years, and you've counteracted, you know, some of the negative messages that kids get from the media, and you know better than I. In some homes, they don't get a whole lot of positive. In some homes, they do get a whole lot of positive, you know, but a school should be a place that there's a steady diet of that. So that's the general model. That's it. And actually, even though we'll focus on the knowledge system, we've got to do a good job there. The more important systems are the cognitive, the metacognitive, and the self. And that's what makes the academy the academy. You know, when kids are asked, what'd you like about this? Hopefully there's something, and they'll say, I like that part where I got to work on my own project. I like the part where they told me, I like the part where I got to meet people from the community who had done incredible things. I once heard somebody say, with most schools, you could draw, if you do a radius, I forgot if it's a half mile or mile, I forgot. So let's say a mile, err on the conservative side. Now, any school, most schools in the country, if you do a mile radius around the school, you could find stories of people who have done things that are absolutely amazing, you know, that haven't been told to anybody but their families. That's when it's really powerful. You get people from the same culture, you know, kids look at and say, you know, he or she, they come from kind of my background too. You know, that's really, really powerful. So I want to give you a few minutes just to react to that. That's the big picture without the details. Those 4 systems will do knowledge, but will also do the other ones too. Just at your tables, react to that. Good idea, bad idea,